Hi there, and welcome to the Neoprene Playmat. I'm your host, Matt Piak, and this is Tastes on Tuesday. Essentially, this is a time where we take a look at what my tastes are the way they are, why they differ from other people, or and hopefully that provides a little bit more insight when you're watching my content, when you're looking at my reviews, or I guess not reviews, but when I'm talking about a product, whether or not I like it or dislike it, things like that. You're more able to get a sense of who I am as a gamer and whether or not that resonates with you. Maybe my maybe my tastes are polar opposite to yours, and that's helpful because when you see that I really like a game, that means it's not going to be a game that you enjoy. Or when I hate a game, that might mean it's one you really like. In other circles, maybe you really agree with what I'm saying, and you think that our tastes align. Well, then when I give a good review, especially of a game that's maybe not so well received by the community, you can trust that and feel like it's a game you may also like. Which is what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be talking about a game that has not really been well received by the gaming community as a whole, and I want to hop into the nuance of why I think that might be. I mentioned yesterday in the Spend My Money Mondays segment that I recently bought a neoprene playmat for this game because, well, it was on sale. I love neoprene playmats, and I enjoy the game. And it's one that hasn't gotten a lot of love, so everything for it is pretty reasonably priced. Now, I will tell you, I am filming this on Sunday, so you will see some Black Friday pricing. Unfortunately, this won't be posted till Tuesday, so maybe those prices won't affect you. Either way, the prices of this game, just in general distribution, tend to be really low. It goes on sale all the time, so I don't think you are going to have a hard time finding it for a decent price, which is why I'm not quite as concerned with releasing this after kind of the Black Friday deals go off. But all of that said, let's hop into it. All right. So, Alien Artifacts. Now, this game is one that is not highly well liked. BGG, the rating on it, I believe, is a 6.7. And this game came out in 2017, so it's had a while to get some reviews. And so, that said, for whatever reason, this game has captivated me, and I have really enjoyed it. It's been one that I like to get to the table. Not everyone else that I play with has enjoyed it the way I have, but I think it does some really interesting things, and so I kind of want to dive into that. But before going into the reasons I thoroughly enjoy it, I want to address the reasons why I don't think this was a well-received game. So, when this came out in 2017, Portal made a huge promise. They said, 4X games. You all want 4X games, but you don't want the 4-hour playthrough. Well, here is a card-driven 4X game that will take you 60 to 90 minutes to play. That gets a lot of people excited, a lot of people pumped. Tons and tons of shops, online retailers, they stock up on this game because of the promise of a 60 to 90 minute 4X game that is done by a great publisher. Portal Games puts out really good products, and so everybody thought this was going to be a really hot game. Well, I can tell you this right from the beginning. This game is not a 4X game. If you're not familiar with that terminology, it stands for, it's funny because it's probably a 4E game, but it's EX for the start of all of these words, so they just call it 4X games. But it's where you can explore, expand. Expanding is talking about usually technological development where you get more abilities over time, more powers. Exploit, so there's some form of political nuance to what's going on. You're able to discuss things over with players. Sometimes there's making alliances, that type of thing. And then exterminate, which is where you vanquish an opponent, where you fight each other, right? Where there's some sort of warring element. Kind of the classic 4X game example is Twilight Imperium, which is this big sprawling game that takes 6 to 8 hours to play through usually. And so that's a lot of categories to fill in a small amount of time. Doing that in 60 to 90 minutes is no easy task. In addition to that, this game came out at a time when 4X games, reducing the time on a 4X game was like this really popular notion. And most people have said, oh, well, it can't be done. It can't be done. And all these games started trying to do it, and not many of them were successful. But then when you have a publishing company like Portal that has the rapport with the community that Portal does, this is a great board game publisher. And they do really well with card games. I mean, look at 50 First State, my favorite game of all time. Look at Imperial Settlers. Look at Empires of the North. A lot of these are really well received games. And so everybody had high hopes that maybe this had been solved. And I will tell you, this was not solved at all by this game. This game is not a 4X game by any means. And I feel like they sold themselves short by really trying to cram it down your throat that no, this is a 4X game. And they did that by essentially taking all of the cards, and they've given the cards different suits here. You can see that little design up in the corner there, right? So this card is an exterminate card. This is an expand card. This is an exploit card. And I don't think I'm seeing it, but there's also like a compass looking one for the explore symbol. And so all these cards work together in certain ways based on the fact that that's a suit. And yes, there are elements of some of these things. Yes, there is player interaction in a combat sort of way with these ships that can attack. But it really doesn't feel like you're exterminating anybody. Yes, there is this idea of expansion because you are getting technology throughout the game that's giving you more powers and allowing you to augment things. That said, it's not really done in a tech tree type of way, which is usually kind of how you see things in 4X games. That said, the expansion idea is probably the one that is most carried through in this game. And sure, you are exploring, you're discovering new planets, which become cards that give you powers, or they come out and they allow you to mine resources on them, and those resources can be used in different ways. As far as exploiting goes, exploiting in this game is mostly reducing the price on things. There's no like alliances, there's no political nature. It really doesn't have any feel of exploitation. And so by all means, this is not a 4X game. This was bad marketing. This was something that everybody had these ramped up expectations of what this game was going to be, and when they got the product, it didn't deliver on what it said it was consistently and almost overtly in the way that all the text on the cards is, the way that they involved all the 4X's into the actual theming of the game with the cards and things of that nature. But that said, when you look past all of that, when you remove that marketing, when you remove the idea that this is meant to be a 4X game, what you end up coming away with is this really a card-driven engine builder that has some like really cool overpowered abilities, which is something I really like. I like any time a game makes me feel powerful, makes me feel like I'm doing something that is unfair to the other players. And if you do that enough in a game and offer that to everybody, it somehow balances out, right? And so the game is about acquiring these alien artifacts over here, which just give you just ridiculous powers. Like there's one that says at the end of the game, take 3 extra turns. There's one that lets you buy 2 cards without paying the price on either of them. Like you feel so powerful every time you do it, but everybody's acquiring these alien artifacts. Although it's rare, it's not like everybody has one to play every turn or anything like that. Everybody is getting these ridiculous benefits. Additionally, you are working to build out. You'll see here there's a side here. This is called your operational side, where you're going to be building cards out this way, right? You have the ships that go on the top, you have the technology that goes in the middle, you have the planets that go on the bottom, and then you have this side that's under development. So and the cards will line up here, and you have to essentially purchase them to get them onto this side of the board, and then you have to spend resources to move them from this side of the player board over to this side. And it scales up. The more stuff you have, the harder it is to move stuff from here to here. And it's ultimately this large puzzle that you're trying to figure out. As I'm going through here, here's the picture I'm looking for. Here's kind of like you're going through this puzzle. That's the new neoprene playmat. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by all the good bits. We're gonna hop back over here. This has a layout of kind of everything. You are you are trying to essentially figure out the puzzle that's in front of you. How are you going to get the most points before time runs out? The game also has this incredibly interesting mechanic. If you look here, this is like the victory point score track. You'll see at the bottom it has a round marker, and that round marker starts where the number of players is. So if you have 5 players, you're going to do 5 rounds. If you have 4 players, 4 rounds, 3 players, 3 rounds. And this round marker moves whenever the deck runs out. It'll just go to the next round. And so you play through an entire deck of cards, and then that triggers the round when you shuffle and get everything going. At the end of the game, if it's, let's say I'm the first player and I go through the entirety of the deck, you will reshuffle and let everybody else take one last turn. But that's how the game ends. It's this deck. And so there are different things you can do to push the game's speed along or to slow it down. You can take actions where you're not spending cards on a turn, so you're not drawing cards up. Or you can build a planet on their operational side like this to mine for 3 resources, which will come off the top of the deck. So the entire game, depending on what you decide to do, you are going to be pushing the track. You have, I don't want to say complete control, but there's a high level of control in when the end of the game is coming, based on what you do. Obviously, the more players you add, the less control you have. And so that just, it makes the game interesting, especially in a 2-player or a 3-player game where you can really intentionally slow the game down or speed the game up. And it makes everybody kind of look around the table, and you're trying to evaluate, how are people doing this? How are people moving the pace of the game? Additionally, these technologies that you get, they offer some really, really interesting powers. They make the game feel different every time. All of these are different and have just different abilities. And sometimes they give you additional actions on your turn. Sometimes they give you a special action that nobody else has. And they just make everything feel different from game to game. Those technologies really affect what you're able to do. Additionally, everybody has a unique character that is kind of focused on one of the 3 main different types of cards, right? There's like 2 factions that are really good with the ships. There are 2 that are really good with the technology, and there are 2 that benefit from having discovered planets. And so everybody at the table is kind of going for something a little bit different, which also lends to kind of a difference in gameplay every time you play the game. Now, the biggest complaint I've heard about the game, besides the whole 4X thing, the thing I got into earlier about how this game says it's a 4X, but it truly isn't a 4X, is this idea of an assembly limit. So on your turn, you have these cards here. You have 3 of them in your hand, and they will vary from 1 to 3 resources. And there's always 2 sides to the card with different numbers of resources on them. And kind of the hard limiting factor of the game is you can only ever play 2 of these unless you have some form of technology or ship that augments how many you can play. And so every turn you're very limited. Things are very scarce, and you have to work really hard to figure out how the heck you're going to be really functioning. As I talked about earlier, you're moving things on this card from this under development side over to the other side, which is, operational and whatnot. And so the first card to move costs 5 resources. So it's fairly easy to get, right here. Here's 3 blue if you have another card with 3 blue or 2 yellow. Yellows are wild. It's easy to move that. Well, then what happens when it becomes 6? Oh, now, I'm moving too much here. Hold on. Sorry about that, guys. So what ends up happening is as you're moving this stuff over from here to here, every card you have adds an additional resource to it. So once you get past 6, you can no longer do it with 2 cards, but you can only play 2 cards to play something. So how are you going to get something from side A to side B? Well, you can prepare resources, which is when you shove a bunch of cards under a specific card, and that allows you to reduce the cost of it by however many symbols are under it. Or you can get different planets, discover different planets, and those planets will augment the cost of things. It'll reduce the price so that you can move more things over. And so this game requires a lot of thinking ahead. Do I really want to stash these resources under here? Do I really want to get this planet to augment these costs? And is it worth it at this time? Or are there different ways to do that? And as you go through and as you play this game, you see more and more puzzly elements, and the puzzle is always different. This game is one that I think I'm going to get a lot of replayability out of. I don't have any of the expansions, but as I play it, as I continue to enjoy the game, it feels different every time I play. It's always difficult. It's always hard to figure out what to do because of that assembly limit. And it makes your decisions incredibly tough. There are 10 different types of actions you can take on your turn, I believe. And yeah, you're not always going to have the resources to do all of them. But with that type of optionality, your decisions always matter. And when I'm looking for a game that is enticing, one that draws me in, it's one that always gives me tough decisions and makes things difficult on me so that when I am successful, when I do something, it feels like I've actually accomplished something. A lot of games are really, really open and just allow you to do whatever the heck you want. And while, yes, that's fun to have tons of optionality and everything is good, I love when something strips it down and says, no, you only get to play 2 of these cards. No, you don't have the resources to do all of these 10 different actions. You better plan to figure out how you're going to make this work. When those constraints, when those limits are put on you, you have to get super creative. And that's where this game shines. Figuring out that puzzle, trying to figure out how you're going to combo cards together to get what you want. And like I said, this game is a bargain. This game is really solid. It's really good. It's so unfortunate that they marketed this as a 4X game and everybody was disappointed when it didn't meet that expectation. But if you were looking for something puzzly, you're looking for something tight, you're looking for something with meaningful decisions, Alien Artifacts is that, and it comes in at a bargain price. I highly recommend this game, and I usually don't do reviews. I've talked about that. I don't really review games. This game is old. Not old, it's 2017. That's only like 3 years old. But in the world of modern board gaming, you don't really hear about things that didn't do well in the market 3 years ago, right? And so I wanted to make the point of bringing this one out and really talking about it and really talking about what makes it interesting and why I think Board Game Geek's 6.7 rating is completely wrong and was completely influenced by the fact that this game was marketed as something that it's not. So Alien Artifacts, it's a really good game. Highly recommend it. I don't know how long these Black Friday sales are going for, but $10, this game, you cannot beat that price. Even at $25, I would highly recommend it if you're interested in a game that's tight if you're interested in a card-driven, combo-driven type game, and you're into solving puzzles that are difficult, that require meaningful decisions, that's Alien Artifacts. One of my favorite poorly rated games. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Have you played this one? Do you see it differently? I've certainly had a lot of friends that have told me this game isn't as good as I think it is. But at the end of the day, this is one I love, and I would love to talk to you about it. If you have questions, feel free, throw them in the comments. Like always, this channel's meant to be a dialogue. So I guess I'll leave it there. This has been the Neoprene Playmat. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.